You didn't believe anything that I said. When they came, you were not prepared. Then it all fell right on your head. And now you're lying in your bed. You've got yourself in a rabbit hole. You're trapped 'cause you did not let go. You took that bait and now...
Hey guys, it's Gary with Alice Eats the Apple. All right, I seem to have a theme going here. This paranormal, ET, disclosure, alien concept. I think they go hand in hand. I think that the paranormal and the ET connection is pretty strong. I think it creates a bigger, larger map. And I'm really interested in that. And I guess this is starting to show because this show is interesting. Next show, last show, they all are sort of in the same theme. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. It's Bill Spicer. And Bill is a gentleman who is, again, balanced, left brain, right brain. He is an aeronautical engineer by profession. He designs the insides of planes. Some incredible work he's done. And he's also an experiencer. And he's been on the craft. And he, like, UFO craft. And so where he and I cross paths, he reached out to me to let me know about a dream he had a few years ago where the ETs came to him and said, hey, guess what? Or his guide, this is how you can video craft in the middle of the day, like ET UFO craft. So he did. He learned how to do it. And he loves to share and he loves to teach people so that they too can have their own experience, because it's really important that you have your own experience. And that's what we talk about. What he gets, how he got to where he is. His story is really interesting. And then he's actually taught me, so I will include some of those videos. I've got some pretty good stuff with my iPhone. And iPhone with a polarized lens, just a cheap pair of sunglasses, popped it out, stick it on in the middle of the day. It's really neat. So he also is he loves to hear from you guys. So if you want to know what you're receiving, what you're seeing, he can help you make sense of that. So reach out to him. I'll include his email address down below and his YouTube. He has one video on YouTube and it's how to do these things. I will put my videos at the end so that way it doesn't get too disjointed. Okay. Have a great week and I hope you guys are doing well and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right, Bill, let me ask you a question. How did you get here? I mean, we first would love to know some of your background. I know you're a pilot. You work anyway. Tell us more about you.
I started out at the age of 17. I was a private pilot, and even while I was in high school. I was still in high school, and I always had an interest in aviation, so I followed that dream and took some architectural studies, and I finally had a degree in interior design, and I used that in aircraft. And I was kind of a science kind of guy. They call me Bill Nye, kind of a science guy, and I've always had that term hung on me. And so I stayed in aviation and got into that and took more technical science classes and things. And as I became more aware through the years, I started to notice that I had certain gifts. And that started when I was 19 and I had a near-death experience. I was working as a land surveyor in the summertime on Friday the 13th of 1976. I got stung by bumblebees while I was land surveying and barely made it to a hospital, and I had a near-death experience.
Oh, wow.
And that
can you recall that?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I remember everything vividly. I started to step out of my body in an emergency room after they had given me epinephrine. I finally then started to come back into my body because I remember leaving my body and standing there and not knowing what was going on except the pain went away. And then all of a sudden, after I could see them put the shots in me to get me started again in life, then I came back into the body, and then all the pain started coming back, and that started a ability to start having dreams. I was able to become very, I guess the word is I would travel astrally. After that, I knew how to do it because I'd already been out of my body. I knew what it felt like.
Right.
And now I'm still in college when I figured this out. And that's when I got channeled into the direction of even what job I was going to have. I've been shown things, when to change my position when I've been working, what my career was going to be through my whole 40 plus years in the aircraft industry. And so I help certify aircraft interiors. I work on the seats, the window panels, how all of that is built, the lighting, how the oxygen's presented to you. I work on business jets mostly, so it's private aircraft. I've worked on some commercial like I'm doing now. I'm reconfiguring a business jet into a small private airliner, basically. So that's the kind of things I do as a consultant now. And from there, I didn't give it much thought. And then in 2009, I started having the dreams where I'm waking up on craft. Okay, I am literally taken out at night, and I remember walking around with a white robed energy being standing always to my right side, floating. He doesn't walk. It's a male energy, and he starts showing me things. And he shows me a gray. He brings one out. They're only about, they're only about 4 feet tall. The one he showed me is 4 feet tall. And it was kind of like pleading with me, these guys are in charge. You need to know this. These guys are in charge. That's the impression I got, because I could read its eyes. I could sense it, what it was thinking. Because nobody's speaking. We all use telepathy to get there. It's like you just knew, you didn't have to speak. But I could see my arms. I could see my wristwatch. I could see everything about me was solid in an astral body. And then they start showing me and telling me, you're going to start seeing things in the sky. And I started laughing. I got a really funny laugh, but I was like, ha, 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 yeah, tell me about it.
Sure.
And then I'm kicked back into my bed at 10 minutes till 6 in the morning before I woke up, and typically wake up at 6. And I'm wide awake, and it's like, what just happened? And I didn't think much about it. And then that next day at work, I'm out there doing testing, and I have a video camera in my hand, and there's 5 engineers standing around because we're outside on the edge of an airfield, and we're all looking up in the sky, and to the north, there's a bright star in the middle of the daytime. And it's in May of 2009, so it's clear weather, beautiful weather, and 5 of us saw this light just staring there in the due north, and it's like, well, that isn't an airplane. It wasn't moving. And we're all like, well, this is weird. So I took pictures of it. But when you put on your sunglasses like this, the shades, the solar shields, you could see it. If you take it off, you couldn't see it. And then I remember them telling me you needed to be looking and protect your eyes. Those are the words I heard, was protect your eyes. But I didn't put the 2 and 2 together to use it to filter for the camera. And I had a camera in my hand because I was taking the pictures that day on a test we were doing. So about a week later, I started seeing things in the back, from the back of my house, bright star-like things appear. And I finally figured out to go use the sunglasses and shoot through do it with the camera. And then all of a sudden, I could start seeing things. And then I saw them with my own eyes again, and I would only use some binoculars I had, small binoculars, and then I could start seeing really strange ships appear, literally materialize. And that started, yes.
I have video. I mean, I have a few of the still shots that you sent. Would you like, you want to show those?
Yeah, that's fine, yes.
Oh. So it is... because it's phenomenal. I think what you capture is phenomenal. And you have to remember that these are actually during the day.
During the day. I take them during the day. I don't see things at night like some people do, but I have had experiences at night that go back to the age of 15. When I was 15 years old, with a friend of mine, his mom and his dad, traveling back at night at 10:30 at night, and the car lit up with light, and the UFO was in front of us by about 50 yards ahead of us. and my friend came to a complete stop in the middle of the highway, and none of them remembered it the next day. That's the first out of how to say this, out of all the experiences, that is when it really started to happen. But I didn't understand it at the time, and then after I had my near-death experience, it started to make sense.
So at 15, you had this does sound a lot like a book you and I just read.
Yes. Yeah, I had seen, and then the next day, this was on a Saturday night at about 10:30, when this flash of light that just lit up the inside of the car like daylight. That's what happened. And then a red and green light dropped in front of our vehicle about 50 yards ahead of us at night, and we could see it. I remember everybody in the car making an acknowledgement to it. My friend hit the brakes, and we sat there for probably 10 seconds, and then it took off to the north because we were driving due west, and it was 10:30 at night, no moon that night. I actually went to the FAA the next day because I knew people at the flight service station there and reported, did an airplane fall out of the sky? Because I could go find it on a map where we were at. And the gentleman there just kind of laughed it off, says, "Son, you didn't see anything, nothing happened." And so I played it off. And then after my near-death experience, I remembered that this is the weird things that started happening. And then in 2009, I had the first dream. The next day at work, I start seeing lights in the sky, and I had witnesses. There were 5 of us. 5 of us were engineers. We all saw it if you had the sunglasses on. And other people hadn't. If they didn't, I'd pass them my sunglasses, my fit-overs, these. I'd show them, and they would say, "Yeah, there's something there," and they'd take it off, and you couldn't see it. And I took a series of pictures with the camera I had, but I didn't think of filtering it with the sunglasses, thinking it would capture it. It didn't capture any of it. So a week later, I'm out in my backyard, and after I did the yard work, and I look up in the sky, and there's a bright star again in this, and I had my sunglasses on, and I could see this. And this is about the end of May of 2009, and I said, "This is weird." And the thing just sat in the sky. Then the white light came barreling, shot from northeast to southwest over my house. I saw it. And this time I happened to have a pair of binoculars. Here, I had my binoculars.
Just regular.
Yeah, small, they're small, compact. I could see it with the binoculars. I didn't have my camera then, but I had the binoculars, and it was a huge, it looked like an inverted drop of metal, that teardrop, like the thing had a teardrop shape, except it was inverted, and it flew instantly right over my house after it made some kind of mental connection with me. That's what I remember. There was a mental connection.
How did that feel? How did that feel how did you know
you
that's
wake,
what that
it's
was?
like you're energized. It's like you get, and then I started having downloads of energy that comes down through your head, into your upper body, down into your arms, just comes right on down into your arms, and then on down into the floor, into the ground. I don't know how to describe it. And then about 2 weeks after that, I had the next dream. And that's when I was shown things that were going to happen on this planet and the awakening. I was shown things. The earthquakes that started in 2012. You remember the one in Japan?
Yes.
They showed me all of that. I could hear the men, women, and children screaming. They showed me that people were going to start acting different because the rise in frequency that was going to start to happen. Okay? Mm-hmm. People like yourself were going to wake up. The younger people were going to start waking up. Okay? Now, I knew some of this by the age of 5. I have to go clear back to when I was 5 years old. I remember talking to myself, having a conversation, and thinking, this place is waiting for something to happen. Now, I'm only 5 years old. I remember sitting in the corner in my bedroom having that thought, and I was like, this place is pretty, I use the word barbaric, but some people aren't too nice to one another, right, because they don't understand the soul connection. And I will get into that, because at first I was never really spiritual about this, except I think there's some good literature out there, you can find it, that started to talk about this 2,000 years ago, that there would be an awakening.
Yes.
This is part of it, and that's how I've interpreted it. And so after my second dream, The tall white energy being shows up. I'm in his ship again, and it's 10 minutes till 5 or 6 in the morning when I wake up again, and he shows me all of this. Yeah, the screen behind you, the television behind you, that's what he's showing me all this on, is a big monitor like this. And I'm standing there, and I'm forced to watch what's going on. I see the planet. It's like we're in space looking back at the Earth, and they start showing me a timeline of plate tectonics moving. Then all of a sudden, you were going to see all of these white orbs descend on the Earth. Okay? Well, that happened within weeks after I had that dream and woke up from it. All of my videos started changing and showing these white things flying around. I call them the fast flyers or the tic tacs.
Well, okay, so let's
Yes.
take a look at that, because that is something
Yes.
I would like. I don't know how to freeze it, and my internet's acting really bizarre. Here we go. So this is what you're talking about,
Yes.
and you have one that is like this one.
Yes.
There's so much going on in
Yes.
this.
Okay, I can explain that. And people talk about the veil.
Yes,
That's what the veil looks like.
that's how
Okay.
you see the veil. I mean, that is what it
That
looks like?
is what I was shown, that's the veil. And this gets into the quantum, the science part of it, which is the quantum holograph, okay? The things that we experience, we're living in a matrix. You've used that term.
Mhm.
That is what the matrix looks like when you strip it away, is it looks holographic, okay? But that's what's behind it. And those beings, whatever they are, and those are beings, they look like craft, many of them, but they're basically energy. It's all energy. And each one of those is like a soul. You could think of it as a soul. That's what they showed me. It's energy. And that's basically the conscious field, consciousness.
So each of these,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll post this picture for you guys so that you can
Yes.
see it clear.
Yes.
But each of the white dots are souls. They're not
Yes.
ships, they're souls. But there probably
Yeah.
are some ships up here.
There are ships within it, but most of those are souls. Now, I have a photograph of me, and there's a friend of mine who's also an experiencer in Toronto, Canada. His name's Paul Shishish, and there are 2 photos of the 2 of us that we took independently by completely somebody else, took photographs of us, and sitting over our heart chakra, there are things that look like that. Each one of us has one of those, and it's our soul. And I'm convinced, because in the morning, my mother passed away. I was in hospice with her. I'm sitting right by the bed. I got to be there at her death. And it was early morning at 5:30 in the morning. I was sitting there, my eyes closed. I was in an alpha stage, not in full sleep. And I saw her soul flash through my eyesight. And it looked like one of those. I've also had the same thing happen a year later after her passing. She came through the house because I could sense her energy. And my wife even saw it. It went right over my wife's head. It flew halfway through my house, diagonally. Just appeared about 3 feet from my right shoulder and got into my eyesight and went right through my house. And went right over my wife, and she was reading a book. And she said, did you see that? Because the room lit up. And we look like that. And my friend and I, Paul and I, both have over our heart chakras are what I believe are our souls. And I'll share you those pictures. I don't think Paul will have a problem because he posts on YouTube, but I'll ask him.
Okay.
But after that experience,
So this is all still 2009, or you're talking this experience?
This experience, yes, but this goes clear back to 2009 and merging into 2010 when I started to see through the matrix or into the beyond the veil, okay? And they showed me that while I was on the craft, and that things are a projection. It's quantum physics, and that's what this whole is, because our consciousness is involved, and we're living out an experiment. Basically, this is a big life experiment, and that's who I am with, leading me every time I'm back on the craft. I'm always with the same guide. It's the tall, I call him a tall white robed spirit being. I believe I've done a rendering that showed a male and a female version of that. It's
Yes.
kind of spooky at first, but everything's in black and white. All the light from the room either emanates from the walls, which are white, the floor's black, usually, that you're walking on. They're giving off light, and then your body, and you're in the astral form like this, you can see your arms and everything, and you feel about 50% lighter when you're in this dream state, astral dream state. Now we're going to get into the third one. I was taken the third time after I had finally mastered taking all the pictures, okay, of blocking the sunlight to do what I do. And we can get into that. But the third time on board the craft, then they started to show me the technology that they have, because I said, I understand the singularity. I know what that is. I know what Merkaba are, which you can present yourself as anything you want, but it's an energy, it's a craft. It's like putting the aura of energy around you, and you can teleport yourself, your soul, your spiritual part, and you can manifest in any way or shape you want. A lot of these that we're seeing are not really in our realm, and I've talked about that, where you can be in a place A and a place B. It's called, in the quantum world, you can be in two places at the same time.
By location, is that the same?
Yeah. Yes, it's by location. Okay. Physicists can do this with atomic particles. Identical particles can be 100 miles away from each other and still move and do the same thing together. Okay, we know that exists. I spoke with Dr. Rudy Schild. I believe you brought that name up in the past. Rudy and I spoke for 3 hours about this when I had to download all this information. And that's the guy that I spoke to in 2010. And he took my phone call during the day, and we spoke 3 times for 1 hour each. And this has got me tied in with Dr. Mitchell, the former Dr. Mitchell. Yeah, the astronaut. And then I got into his literature, and then it all made sense to me, because that's exactly what they showed me on the craft. And the energy, I believe in one of my photos, you can see a light column being projected above the craft. I remember sending one of those pictures to you, and you can see it being projected, and it's a column of white light that just comes right up. Well, in the craft, I was shown that there's a big cube in the lower deck where all this energy is gathered from. I haven't figured out where they get it from, but they get it, and then it's beamed up through a floor, and it's a white column of light, and they let me go touch it, because I asked if I could go over there and touch it, and I touched it, reached out with my left hand, and you can sense it's kind of like touching a warm, soft pillow. That's the best thing, but you can feel the energy going through your body when you touch it. And instantly, we're teleported, and I'm traveling through space and time, and my guide's with me. And then I wake up because I don't know where we're going, because I'm finally fearful. It's the only time I've ever felt fear in my mind, and it kicked me back out of the sleep. I woke up, and it's 10 minutes till 6 in the morning.
Time to go home.
Yeah, it's time to go home.
Time to go back.
Yes. And then after that, I started on my trek to try to discover what all this was. And then I started reaching out to people. Dr. Rudy Schild sent me one of his videos where he talked about the black holes and the energy fields around those, and they're basically singularities. They're basically portals, and everything we think in consciousness goes back through these, back to the conscious field, which is God. You can use the word God. Some people don't want to use that, but it's Supreme Being where we all emanate from and we're part of. And if people would begin to understand that, well, then we wouldn't have all this bickering, fighting, because we'd all sit here and laugh about it and say, okay, we're all from the same place. We're just wearing a different suit. That's all we're doing. But when you strip it all away, we all look alike. People don't realize that. We all look alike. And I've seen that because I've traveled. I know where we were going now. When I touched the light, we were going to the conscious field. I was going back home.
You can actually go there?
I've never been there yet. I've asked to go, but I haven't gotten the answer yet. They haven't told me it's ready for me to see it. But and that leads up to the final sleep dream, I call it, or astral dream. And it's when everything changes. And what you have shown in the back, there's a huge white flash of light that happens from the direction of the sun. I'm standing in a supermarket parking lot, probably in the fall, because I can see all the foliage. I know what clothes I'm wearing. I can see people still wearing summer attire, but it's kind of fall-like. It's in September, maybe. That's my impression. It's not October. It's not winter yet. And I'm wearing my sunglasses, and a bright flash of light comes over my shoulder. I'm facing north, and everything begins to change. There's a wave after the flash, and it moves through the parking lot about 30, 40 mile an hour coming at me, and I'm seeing people being taken up into the sky. And then I get taken up. A lady in front of us and standing by her car, she just gotten out of her car, she goes up. Me and my wife go up, and then I can see the ship. We're going into one of these big white ships that I've already been on, because I've seen it before, because of when they put me back into my body after sleeping, to get back out of the into the sleep to wake up, I can see the ship. I'm actually brought back, and I can look back and see the ship. So I'm going the other direction. I'm going towards the ship, but I can see the veil or the matrix and that wave, and I can see the I call them the souls. They're all there, and everything just starts to happen. And there's a few people that are left, because I can still see them running around the parking lot wanting to know what's going on, because they can see people leaving, and they're just losing their mind. That's the last. I hate to be, I don't want to frighten people, but that's what I saw. That may be my awakening. Maybe that was intended only for me and not for everybody else. But I do believe there's a point where other experiencers like myself have talked about there's an earth splitting into two. That's what happens.
Right.
We move up in frequency.
And
the next level, to the fourth and fifth. Mm-hmm. I finally figured out that the beings, after reading Susan's book.
Suzy Hansen, yes.
Hansen's book, she describes these beings. They're the governing board. They're the ones that let you come here. And now it all made sense when I read it. And she said in her paragraph that she wrote about them that they float. They don't walk, they float.
Yeah. That's
exactly what they did on the ship. And I couldn't believe it. Now, there's something she left out. They have no emotion, because that's a lower frequency behavior. Our emotions are lower frequency.
Well, it's duality.
Yes.
I think that to feel good, you have to have bad.
Yes.
Bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the duality. But they don't experience it, and I could tell, because when they showed me the second time what was going to happen on the Earth, with the earthquakes happening, and I did get notification, energy downloads into my body, like the night before the Fukushima earthquake. My wife's my witness. Because I'm standing there in the house, and I said, I can't move. I literally was frozen, and you could see the hair on my head stand up. She says, "This is unbelievable." And I said, "Well, you're my witness." And it said, "There's going to be a major earthquake." And we get up in the morning, and there's just tsunami warnings and everything. And they tried to warn me. And then every time we had earthquakes here, they had them in Oklahoma and in Kansas, where I'm from, I would get a day ahead of time, I'd get all of the downloading of the energy, and I'd tell people that I worked with, my wife, anyone that would listen, we're going to have an earthquake tomorrow. And sure enough, we'd have a 4 or 5.6 earthquake down in Oklahoma, and my house has been through 3 or 4 earthquakes now. I mean, it shook the house. You can feel it.
Why do you think they tell you this, though?
Why did they do this?
I mean, because there's not a lot you can prepare for you, or do you just think you're connected to that degree to them?
Well, some people don't listen very well, because by now I've already presented my presentations to people in Kansas City. I've spoke twice there, and smaller groups around the Wichita area I've spoken with, and it just enforced that, hey, what I'm doing, this is all real, people. And someone tried to warn us it was going to start to happen, because this is where things are starting to count down and the frequency is raising itself. Mother Earth is raising its frequency.
Right. And
it's
you can see that.
it's not all the normal. Humans have very little to do with this. I kind of laugh about the global warming when people talk about it. It has nothing to do with that, because NASA even knows that the whole solar system is warming up. They knew this 30, 40 years ago. I've talked to other people about that, and there's actually things that some people and our governments are doing to try to stop it, actually, to keep it from happening as fast. And that's another whole subject. I don't believe we need to get into that. But at the end of the day, the frequency is rising, because now there's more and more people. When I start to show them, like your videos you sent me and my own pictures, they're like, oh, wait a minute, there's something to this. And I said, well, the earthquakes, because if they knew me, then they come back. I've actually had people call me and it's like, you were right, weren't you? Because they've experienced it. Their house shook, their business shook. And I said, well, and then they wanted to know the story. Well, how did you know this? Because they showed me. And other people, they call them the space people. You know, we laugh about that. Oh, it's the space people. They showed me. Okay. Well, it's not just space people. It's a higher frequency being that exists, because there's multiple levels of life, and it isn't all human, as we're accustomed to. You know.
Well, probably for at least 5 or 10 years, way before I really started to open up with this, I've always said, how do we know that there's not somebody right here? It's just they vibrate at a rate that I can't see.
Yes.
And I think that we just sort of know these things, and you're right. It's like, and I've had it said, I think it was with Miss M, and I love the way she said this. She said, it's like they braid more of you into your body, into your avatar here. But you come in completely, I love the word woke. I mean, you always have been. And so you really are part of that first wave. But okay, so do you want to say, I don't know if you want to say this, but I know a lot of our listeners listen to Allison Coe, and Allison Coe, she's a QHHT practitioner, and she was just inundated. I mean, all of these clients talk about the shift and all of these things, and that's really what you saw. I mean, almost verbatim, what she says that comes through for her is what you've seen. Right. And you want to talk about what your wife brought home not too long ago?
I'm going to have to think about that.
I know what you told me, that because you did see, because it was very, very real, because you were stepping into that timeline, I believe, and you saw her clothes and didn't. Oh
yes, yeah. That's the supermarket. The time change, the frequency change that happens on a large scale. Yeah, I can talk about that. It's interesting that she went clothes shopping in June and came back home, put on the new clothes, and I'm doing dishes. I'll tell you this. I was washing dishes, and she comes around and says, "Well, look what I got," and I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting. I've already seen those clothes," and I just happened to mention, I've seen those clothes before. You know, it was interesting about that, because that's what she's wearing when this happens, and I mean down to the detail, the top, and the shorts she's wearing, the khaki colored shorts she's wearing. And I mean, we've talked about it. She knows about the dream that I've had, because we've talked about it, and we've actually stood there together in the parking lot on the paint stripe where I'm standing, because I remember looking down to see where we were. And I can go back there today or tomorrow, and I still get energy like I do with the knowing when earthquakes are going to happen. I can feel the download. I brought several of my friends who are other experiencers, friends, and stand at the same spot, and they get the same feeling. Yeah.
So I think that there are timelines, and there are timelines that fall away. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder, how do you put this together? I mean, do you, and I know you were saying that could have been just for you, but it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like
No.
it's a possibility, a potentiality. What do you think?
Well, other people that have looked ahead that do, like Margie does, she teaches people how to look ahead in time, and other people have done that. Major Ed Dames has done that, and they talk about a great flash of light from the direction of the sun. I never believed him. I mean, I watched his videos and read his books, but I never really believed it until I had the dream, and they showed me this. And I remember all the details. When I can go back and stand there and remember all the details, what I'm wearing. Unfortunately, I didn't look at my wristwatch that I had on my hand that day because I could see my rings and stuff. You know, I have everything what normally I wear in public, but I didn't look at my wristwatch. I wish I had, because it might have told me something. But I know what time of day it was because of where the sun was at. It's between 11 and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 11 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. I've gone there, and I kind of know, and I know what the foliage looks like on the trees because I can see vegetation. Yeah, it's like fall, early fall.
I'm trying to see if, because mine wasn't exactly like that, but for us, it felt like with my family, we flipped off a diving board into the pool, kind of that feeling, and it was cool. And that's when I ended up in the other place, but it was the same way. I could see everything. I could see it, and what my tell was a chip bag tumbled across the street, and it was just, it's almost like you're in this space. In a dream, I may see just the pin, but I know when I'm having that type of experience because I can almost look around and see everything, like I'm actually standing there. And I was just trying to think what time of Houston, it's tough because 9 months of the year, you know, it's warm.
It's green. It's warm there. Yeah, I understand.
But
I think what you and I have experienced, and other experiencers, other people have been watching movies in a movie theater, at the movies, and have it happen while they're sitting there watching the movie.
Wow.
And they can see the everything split away, and they move away from people that they're sitting next to. I mean, it's like we're moving to a different place and a different timeline and a different frequency. And all I can tell you is I go back to a ship. I go back to one of these large craft, and because I've seen it, so I wasn't afraid of it. Other people, I could tell the look on their faces, they're going up with me. They didn't know what to expect. I already knew because I'd already done it 4 times by then, 3 to 4 times, so I knew what it looked like. Going in the teleportation, I call it, is what it feels like.
The feeling, you know, and I want. So I have this theory. So I was traveling over spring break, and I think it was right before I met you, and I write to connect. And my guide said, "Okay, let's go back. Their timing is just, you know, I will ask a question and I'll get the definitive answer 2 years after that, and there's no time. And
there's no time, right?
Sometimes it's much faster, but it is. So I'm writing, and they said, what if you actually went that day? What if you are living in that space now, because it is all a hologram? And what if there are a lot of us, and I it's sort of like that montage where you go back and you replay things, and I thought, you know, what if? And what if we're just here helping other people come? Because from what I understand of it, eventually everybody will come.
Yes.
So, you know, it could be that it already happened.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, that because of the way the energy is right now, I think it's already happened. In fact, it may have happened last year even. I mean, from my point of view, it may have already happened. And I'm just here to finish helping raise the frequency. That's what I was sent here for. Some people might disagree with that, but I believe there's been waves and waves of people coming in because we were sent here to help raise the frequency. And I keep reaching out to more people that are in their 30s and 40s that I work with. And I said, it's time for me to tell you what I know. And I start showing them this. People I work with, they're starting to understand, because the videos have been the biggest example of it, because they're like, well, yeah, there's something going on, and they can look around and see there's something going on. And I'm like, yep, it is. And I explain and tell my story, and they're like, and they're not freaking out anymore. Now, the older people do. Many older people will just come unglued and can't accept it. Now, I do have a neighbor next door who's retired, and he's in his 70s. He's seen these craft with me standing there himself, okay? And he's brought his old buddies over, and I've demonstrated this, and they're all like, okay, this is all real. And then just, last year when the videos from the Navy and the Pentagon were released, then their eyes, they came looking for me. They came and knocked on my door and said, say that again?
Were they real?
Yes, they're real. Yes, I believe they are.
Maybe the way they edited it, it felt like the pilots that's not what they would say. I mean, just the way they reacted, it felt, something felt off about it, but it could have been the way they edited or what they released.
I think it's how they edited it. Some people didn't want to be shown, which is obvious because they have a career still.
Right.
Some of them that are already out of the military, the first big pilot that came forward, I have to applaud him because I know exactly what he's thinking, because it was the way I was when I first started seeing this in the sky. I've seen whole battles. Now, we'll get into that, but I videotaped battles of large orbs and small orbs fighting each other. It's all on video. I've got them on DVDs. And this is how it was presented to me, is that there was a battle still going on as to who controls this planet. That's how it was first shown to me. And I've got the videos, and there's big orbs, and then there's little bitty orbs, and they're physically fighting. They don't shoot ray guns at each other. They physically are running into each other. I mean, it's just like watching. It's unbelievable. And then I've seen another ship come around and pick up the little bitty orbs out of the sky. I've got all that on video.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
And it's quite interesting how that worked, because that was how all this was shown to me in the beginning, is that there was a battle at the time in 2010 going on still for who was going to run the planet, the negative or the good, the positive or the negative. And guess who won? The good, the positive won.
Well, you know what they told me they told me this probably, I don't know, last week. They said, don't worry. Yes, there are these, yes, there's the dark. But we have to have the dark, because if we don't have the dark, we don't have the light. So we almost employ them. And that's hard to get your mind around if you're not understanding the bigger picture.
Right.
And they said, but now it's time for them to move on. And so that's what they're doing right now, is trying to say, okay, party's over, and you have to get back, telling them to go home or go to the next spot. And if there are groups that come in and help raise it, and I want to back up to that, because what I've been shown is it's a heart. When we come through the veil, it's almost like sticky paper, like fly paper.
Yes. Old-fashioned
fly paper, and wants, desires, love, hate, greed, all of it. It covers up why you're here, but there is some of us, a lot of us, give off this, I can't say the word, frequency that cuts through it, and it reminds people who they are. That's why you can look at someone and you don't see necessarily the rings and the watch and you don't really hear about all that. It's about, and even maybe what they're doing right now, and it's not, hey, I think you're better than that. It's, I see your soul. I know who you are. And it's time to get on with it. And
and that's exactly what that's all right. You just said exactly what I'm able to communicate with others, is that I have actually told them that I can see their energy field. I know who they are, whether they're wrapped in issues and all the negative. They carry the negative. And I can see that. And I've actually had to tell people in the office that I work with, even last week, I said, gentlemen, cut the negativity. They were literally arguing and yelling at each other over things that had nothing to do with anything, really. I mean, it was interesting how that works. And yesterday, I even had to come to the defense of a person that we were standing there looking out of our office, and there was a man and woman across the street having an argument. That's the best description. And the things I saw, I actually had to go out there and make sure and check that these people were okay. And the male was acting the typical male, the negative. He had a lot of negativity, and I had to tell him to stop it, and had to get involved in a conflict and make sure that it didn't happen anymore. But I just kind of knew that it was going to, when you look out there, it's like, this isn't going to be good. You can just tell. So yeah, I've had to physically step in and stop people from being aggressive and hurting other people. And really, they're hurting themselves, and they just don't even know it.
Well,
And they lower themselves, and they are the ones that are going to be left here for a while. Okay?
Exactly.
I hate to tell people this. If you want to talk about, I don't want to use the word hell, but this is going to be hell for a little bit, because they're going to have to be left alone and figure this out with some other people to figure this out as to who they really are. And that's the thing of, last week I sent you a video from Alan Watts, and he says, being aware is being aware. That's kind of the two words. You have to become aware. And most people are not awakened and are not aware of that, of even what's going on around them, because they're just into themselves.
Well,
They're not into, they don't want to there's no empathy. That's a good word. There's no empathy for other people and who they are and where they are in their life and their circumstances. And if we broke away the avatar, our bodies, and if everybody knew, if I pointed to the graphic you had that I took of the veil, that's really what we are those little points of light, or I call them orbs. That's who we really are. We're little balls of energy.
Right.
And we all look alike. Now, there's some that are bigger, and just like our natural bodies, you may be bigger or smaller. There may be some variation, but at the end of the day, we're more alike than we are different.
Well, we all come from the one. I mean,
We all come from the one, from the conscious field. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you an interesting story. It was a year ago last May. I'm flying on a business trip from Vegas to Burbank, California, and we're flying in an airline that allows you to take off from a fixed base operator. So I didn't have to go to the main airport in Las Vegas, and we were taxiing out, and the JANA flights, where they go to Area 51, you've heard of those, the whitetail, the red paint stripe planes, are parked there, and that's how they fly people out there from Vegas. Well, we're taxiing right by these jets, and it's in the evening at about 8 o'clock in the evening, so the sun hadn't gone down yet. And the guy I'm flying with, he points that out. He says, well, those are the JANA flight planes. And I said, well, yeah, and look what they do. So I got out my cell phone and showed him a picture, like one of those that I've shared with the big white saucer-shaped picture. I showed it to him, and we instantly got into this connection and talking about Rudy Schild, quantum mechanics, and he's an engineer, but he had taken physics. He had taken classes in quantum physics, so he knew what I was talking about with the scientific part of it. And a young lady sitting across the aisle diagonal from us overheard the conversation when I brought up Rudy Schild, and she says, "Sir, how do you know him?" And I pointed the cell phone with a picture at it toward her, and she's like, "Oh, now I understand." So there are other people that are awakened, because Caroline, she deals with ET people that have had experiences, and she does the regression. And she was on her way back to California because she'd been there in Vegas. She's a producer, produces videos about this. And out of that conversation, so you never know where the spirit's going to lead you. And then after that, I had contact with her, and we shared a lot more information, which got into the conscious field. And she remembers being 4 or 5 years old, being taken there repeatedly to where that's her off planet. And I explained to her my dreams, and she says, yeah, that's how it happens. They take your soul leaves your body. People don't believe that at night, but your soul, if you go to sleep, your soul leaves your body. And it's quite an amazing thing. And then I put it all together. After talking to Caroline, I finally had a complete picture. And then the book that Suzy wrote just answered the rest of the questions I had, because my experiences are very similar. The biggest issue I've had is dealing with my family members.
Yeah.
They've been the people that are the hardest to convince. The stranger is easy, but your own family is harder. My wife's had experiences standing there beside me. She could see what was going on, but she didn't want to believe it. She does now, okay? It took a decade, but, we're here. We understand it. The rest of my family, it's kind of a laughing matter. My brother won't have anything to do with it, but yet he has other gifts. He can hear and see beyond the veil and doesn't know what to do with it, and has been for many years. And I will tell you this. I've had both of my parents have passed on, and I've had other relatives pass on, and I've even had my father-in-law pass on, and I've also had contact with them, which is very real, and they project themselves as if they're in their 40s usually. Mm-hmm. Okay, they don't look much older than 40, maybe 30. My mom showed herself as if she was much younger, but and would tell me things that they were aware of. And the last one was my father-in-law, who was he was a college professor, a music college professor. So he's very, everything had to be a certain way. And he held himself, very, upright and really good guy. And he put us into the house he grew up in Kansas City. That's the setting. And I ask questions. Yeah, they put the setting together. You're not in control of that. And they put me in a situation where my wife was there, my mother-in-law, who's still alive, was there, and they got to listen, and I asked the questions. So we know about the grandkids. He knows what's going on. He's happy, but I got to ask him the tough question: what about my seeing what I see and what I've experienced? He says, yes, and it's all real, and you're supposed to know that. And that was my last experience I've had where I've been out of body at night and dreaming, and that was 2 years ago. And in fact, just thinking about it right now gives me goosebumps. I mean, the hair on my arms and head, it's just standing up because of the energy, because I know it's true. And that's what he told me. And then the setting cleared, and guess what? I woke up and it was 10 minutes till 6 in the morning. It's always the same time. I could set my watch by it.
That is your boundary. It's like, okay,
that's my boundary. Yeah, I have to get back to the body. Yeah, so I can wake up and have a normal day.
Yeah.
But that is how strange it all is. But taking the pictures, that's the next thing, is I've taught many, many people how to do this.
I'm so glad you're still here. This audio thing is a bit challenging, and I acknowledge that. We don't know what happened. We did the show. I checked it beforehand. We did the show. It was completely fine. Afterwards, I did the intro. It was completely fine. Yet the entire interview sounded like I was in a tunnel, a wind tunnel, or a can, maybe at the bottom of a can. And we looked for engineers to clean it up, to fix it up. I did the best I could. You'll be happy to know that I'm getting ready to go back into a studio where I don't have to worry about this stuff. It just really is distracting. All right, so stay tuned for part 2, where Bill shows everyone how to point your cameras and your iPhones to the sky and see what type of UFO spacecraft you can find. And I am putting all of my videos, and I have some really cool ones, at the end of the next show. I just thought it would be more appropriate to put it there instead of the end of the first one. That's about it. I hope you're doing well. See ya on the other side. Bye.